Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us on another conversation with a community in addictions, and we're so glad that you're again taking part of your time to enjoy these videos as we have these discussions. Today we are joined with Victoria, right? So if you wanted to kind of give a quick introduction, if you're willing.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm Victoria. I am from this lovely little town of Lee. I am a recovering addict, among many other things. Mom, daughter, friend, sister, great community member. I have been clean for 45 months now, and I am just plugging away. And you're joined with.
Oh, it's on me.
Yeah, it's on you.
So I don't know that whether people know it or not, but like I was telling you, there's this power of someone giving their story, and it's a way for addicts to kind of see that they're not alone, and to see not only to see the struggle, but to see the victory part of everything.
Yeah.
And getting into recovery. And I personally am excited about this particular one, and to hear what Victoria has to say. And I hope that everybody else enjoys it as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can kind of, whatever you want to say is perfectly okay. Whatever you don't want to say is also perfectly okay. But yeah, where would you? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, just kind of dovetailing on yours, the idea about being excited, because we had discussed bringing you on a couple weeks back, and that was one of those things where I was looking forward to this session,
Right.
just to kind of give a little behind the scenes. So we are recording this on a Tuesday morning, and a portion of our church building is a polling location for voting, and so today is a voting day, and so when the election judges show up, they don't have keys into the facility, and they've got to start setting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, which means my wake up call this morning was at 5:15. So I've been here since before 6 a.m. this morning. At the same time, just exhausted and excited to go through this, and so I was looking forward to it, and so yeah. But
and I like the idea that Victoria is a Albert Lee, just born and raised, correct?
Born in Montana, raised in Albert Lee.
Yeah. Right.
So this is the community. This is someone who this is home, and so this will be fun. Yeah. So So I guess so yeah, kind of start us off. Do you have like the area like this kind of like a little open ended? It's a little bit different.
Okay.
Usually we have a direction, but
So when I say I've been 45 months clean, I mean like this go round, but like this go round is like way more different than the first time I got clean.
Mm-hmm.
In 2010, I was arrested for methamphetamines. And I then followed into Teen Challenge, got out, was sober for many years until about 2018. But I was just sober. Like I was doing the deal. I was doing the checklist. I was, going to meetings, having all these jobs, doing what I was supposed to do on paper because that's what was expected of me. But I wasn't like reinvesting back into my life.
Well, I like how I noticed something when you were saying that, and I'm picking up this. I was just sober.
Yeah.
And I like the way you put that. I very rarely have I heard it put that way, because the whole reinvesting part.
Yes, and so without that reinvestment, without that fellowship, without that like the cream of the cake, like you end up with just sobriety.
Mm-hmm.
And through my growth, I've realized that there's sobriety and there's recovery. Sobriety is like when you first get your feet wet, and you're like make that decision to get clean.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't reinvest into that and like get the benefits out of it, which is the fellowship, which is like gaining all the good stuff that comes from it, then you're just living that life on a checklist and you don't have nothing to ground you.
Yeah. It's kind of like we talked about a little bit last time with the idea of like being that the acts of service,
Mm-hmm.
and why that's so vital of having to pour into something in order to that process of
Investing
in the
yeah.
investing of it. Yeah, because I
In
that
your
is really
recovery.
cool. I like that.
Yeah, so like when I think about that, and I think about the growth and the difference in my lifestyles that I did in both while I was clean and sober, is that one is like the glass is half full and it just maintains that way. So you're
Yeah.
sober, but it just stays that way. It's not growing, it just stays. You're stable, you're just doing it, but you're just there. So when that thing spills, it just empties.
Yeah.
And then when I've built my life in recovery now, which is spiritual and investing in community and fellowship and gaining all these rewards, instead it's not just half full, it's just spilling over.
Yeah.
So then I just imagine this like cup spilling over, like they talk about your cup spilleth over.
Yes.
And that's exactly what happens. And it's just a continuous flow. And it's just like family and community and hope and all these things that keep you grounded, because then when something breaks or if you get a crack in your bottle, it's okay because you're still pouring into it.
Yeah.
That it doesn't run dry.
That is so cool.
And so that is where really, I can't stress enough about it's vital to someone's stability and their life to sustain, to keep moving forward, to be reinvesting back into it.
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, I'm sober, you're doing great, and so for me, I did that whole many years of stint of sobriety, and then one thing broke and I was like back to the raft, swimming in addiction, and went so deep that in 2020 I was arrested for a first degree sales charge. It was shortly after my nephew had passed away. I just had a lot of all these other struggles in the community around me that I never let anyone into. You know what I mean? I was just trying to do it on my own, trying to have that control that really wasn't there. And we find that control comes from trauma, different various like insecurities or vulnerabilities, because I didn't surrender anything over. I thought I had to carry it.
Yeah, well, that's what's really amazing, is noticing like you're trying to do it on your own strength, and that trauma that it triggers, even first time users. I know of a minister out of state who was helping somebody in the midst of a recovery issue where this individual left the controlled substance in the possession of the pastor, and either he had forgotten or he delayed. It was in his office for I don't know how long, and he had a overstressed day, and so he decided just to see if that will help calm him down, and it flew into a full-blown addiction for him that lasted a couple years. He ended up keeping it hidden, still doing church conferences, speaking everywhere, functioning, just doing it all, until he was pulled over, and he was in found in possession of it. And but it started with that little bit of whatever degree of trauma. It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
But he had that stressing snapping point, and that brought him in. So that's
it's kind of a weird point when I think about it, that so a lot of people are like, well, why would you even try that?
Right.
Why would you even start this? And it's a good point for you to bring that up about the pastor, because it wasn't about actually starting the drug. It was about
relief.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and
covering or
Yeah.
whatever it needed to be. It had nothing to do with the drug itself.
Right.
Well,
or the lifestyle, or the
Right.
desire to run the street.
Right.
Right. This is not a teenager with a terrible home life.
No.
This is not a kid who grew up in a home that was just beset with it already. This was a pastor who had been a minister for decades and just had a stressful moment and collapsed. And a lot of times we don't think about that. Sometimes, a lot of times people think even like pastors are like, you're a crop of a society. We're just as human as the next person.
Right. And it's a good point that it can happen to anybody.
Yes.
It ain't just, because I feel like a lot of people imagine like, oh, this addict, he's the one living under the bridge, homeless, or penniless, all that stuff. That's not really the case at all. There's actually people from all walks of life, all the way from the poorest to the richest, who are stuck in addiction, So it's a valid story.
Yeah.
I never really thought about, because you've told that before, so I never
Yeah.
really thought much about it until just now. I was
Well,
like,
this is
oh,
well, it's why it's fun. Like, because again, when we have other people come in, it
Yeah.
causes our mind to like
Open.
we think on different tracks because we have other people with us, and so yeah. Sorry to take away. But
No,
still,
that's perfect though. I love it.
Yeah.
That's the value of having that, conversations
Yeah.
is that you get to see through different lenses,
Yeah.
just as simple as like Albert Lee has been known, like people in addiction are like, oh, that's the city with the dark cloud over it, or
Yeah.
you get within 5 miles and really, it's a beautiful city. It's just
very
how
beautiful.
you see it and what you're seeking,
Yeah.
so like, it can be the belly of the beast, or it can, and I've talked about this before, or it can be the heart of the city.
Yeah.
It's just really what you're seeking and what you're trying to sit in.
Yeah.
And so at one point it was like the black cloud, the belly of the beast, and that is what I got sober in, and then found recovery in the heart of the city.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's like you can walk down a street and you can choose to see all the darkness, or you can choose to see the light and see what you can bring into it.
Yeah.
And that's where the balance is. And I literally live in the center of the city.
Yeah. So I want to go back because I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
I had to interject there. So it was 2020, and you had been sober for a while, and then we just say 2020 hit. I mean, it was a awful year for
COVID, everything.
Everything was awful, and so that was another trauma year for you, essentially. And so, if you want to kind of carry on from there,
so I was arrested. I was put into Freeburg County Jail. I bailed out of jail, hitting about a month and a half, and I was like, "This is enough. Like, I can't." My oldest, who's 19 now, was like, "Mom, if this is what you want to do, I won't speak to you no more."
Wow.
And she is my baby, So up until that point, she was my only child, and she's amazing. And I was like, I can't lose her. I can't do this to my family. I can't do that to myself. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I still didn't know the value of self-love. Like, I knew how to love everyone else.
Right.
But with that love and me being unstable, because again, I was living in sobriety, not recovery, I was a liability to any kind of stability or safety, because I didn't know the value of self-love yet. So when I bailed out, I was like, I put myself in treatment. I was previously a Teen Challenge graduate from 2012. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Fountain Centers here in Albert Lee, and I did the intensive outpatient program 7 days a week. I, just really dug knee deep into it and found that the value of investing, that's when it really opened my eyes up, when I'm like, and it was COVID again, so it was super even harder, because I had to do like online meetings, and I had to do, because everything was so limited,
a lot more intentionality was in place.
And so it's like I really had to drive myself to say, okay, I could easily slack off and not do this, but I'm choosing to put one foot forward and make this work. So in the midst of that, so from 2020 to 2022, I hadn't been in court. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it was postponed because of COVID.
Right.
Because the government shut down.
Everything
shut down. So in that time, we had so much more darkness growing everywhere, because people were getting those stimulus checks, and all this unnecessariness was going around. And so it's really just, I had to stay focused. So I got sober. I started school. I put myself back in college. I started my AA degree for psychology.
Okay.
I got pregnant with my son, Arturo, and it was scary, because I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like pending this charge, but I had so much like hope and faith, you know what I mean? Like I was like, but why would I have to go? Like, I get that I messed up, and I get that I got in trouble, and I know I'm gonna have to pay a price for that. But like, if I do everything I'm supposed to do, and if I do and give back, and if I just keep pushing forward, maybe, just maybe, I will show that I'm a value. You know.
And it wasn't like it was just for like a month or two.
No, it was.
You're talking about years of establishing some sort of.
You know, reaching out to the community, reaching out, you know, and just flourishing, you know, in any aspect I could. I was going to work, I was going to school, I was, you know, pregnant with my son, gave birth to my son in 21. Again, court kept getting postponed, you know, and
so you're building a whole new life. You're giving birth to your son. You're going through all this process, giving back to the community, working, school, all that. You're literally you're investing in yourself without knowing what the courts are going to do.
Hanging there, you know, just like that, you know, that ever, like when I was in addiction, it was like you're always like looking behind your back for the police, you know. And then here I am in recovery, and I'm like have this beautiful life, and I'm like find myself, and I'm like so happy, and I'm like just radiant, you know. And still every night when I lay my head down, I'm like just praying, like, just God, please don't take this from me, you know what I mean. And even in that aspect though, I had to realize that it wasn't my choice, you know. And that really is a true testament. So I had my son, healthy as can be, so, you know, no drugs, none of me, none of my son, just kept pushing through, had him. Amazing boy, like he wakes up smiling every day.
Everywhere you go, he's blessing everyone who's around. Making everybody smile.
But I got pregnant again.
Okay.
I got pregnant with my twin girls. So yes, so here I am. I have my 1-year-old son. I have my daughter who just turned 18 then, you know. And then I'm pregnant with my girls, and it was like it's weighing on me even more now. You know, and I'm realizing like I'm still going to school full time. I'm still like everything I was involved in, I still was doing. And I'd wake up every day and I'd do it, and I'd put my one foot forward, and like this is what I, you know, this is what makes me happy. Why wouldn't I continue doing this?
Well, because essentially fighting for yourself. Like you're doing all that work. You're fighting for yourself. I'm doing this because I've got to be clean. I've got to make myself. I've got to be healthy. So I've got to do this for myself, so that I can be the person that these kids need me to be.
Right.
You know, that stimulus. That
I mean, it's just like feeds. You know, it's that great kind of restlessness. Yeah. You know, the one that feeds back into you, where it's like it's a purposeful.
You know, so I'm thinking about it, and it's. I mean, how much energy was taken from you from having that gray cloud just kind of hanging over your head,
like that, this open-ended, not knowing.
Because I know every time that I have been having, you know, court and stuff hanging over my head, like I would try to do the right thing, but I never did. You know, it was like, you know, why should I? I'm going to go to jail anyhow. I'm going to go to prison anyhow. I might as well just go ahead and get as high as I can for as long as I can until this occurs. Right. Whereas she chose to do something completely different. So it kind of baffles my mind. Well,
because it goes into the perspective, like the way you're describing
the lenses.
The lens. So the lens I'm looking through is one of here's because any kind of what I will call accountability, responsibility meeting, where you have to meet with somebody for being accountable or being responsible. There's a level of an emotional stress, a physical, emotional, mental stress that's associated with that meeting that's coming up, and that can.
Especially if they have some sort of power over you.
That's why I'm using the word accountable, because it's the idea of like, this is a make or break type of a moment. This is a life catalyst, life changing, and that can bring so much stress.
Well, I could only plan so far ahead, you know.
Well, and what does that do? That's exhausting.
And it limits your growth because you.
But it didn't limit.
But it didn't. No, I just kept. So, and that was the thing when you bring up how you would have got high, and you know what I mean. I know those ideas. I know those thoughts because so many people that I would just randomly run into, which was just the darkness trying to creep in, would be like, well, you're probably going to prison anyways. Why don't you just get high? Or why don't you go sell back? Because, you know, I used to be deep into it, you know? And it's just crazy because in an addict's mind, it's like, well, why wouldn't I?
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I probably am going away for a long time because since 2010 was the last time I had gotten in trouble, and here it's 2020, so there was a long period in there
Right.
where I wasn't a menace to society, where I
Right.
wasn't, you know,
You were functional.
I was functional. I was doing my checklist, you know, but I wasn't investing. And so here I am now reinvesting. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't I be accepted? You know, why wouldn't I get to say? Why wouldn't I? And I just kept pushing that forward and pushing that forward in my mind. And so in 2021, I gave birth to my son. In 2022, on November 3rd, well, November 2nd, I had court sentencing finally.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. But 2 weeks before that, I get a letter saying that, you know, you got a new lawyer, because they kept pushing my lawyers all around. Like, here's a new lawyer, here's a new lawyer, here's a new lawyer, here's a new court date, here's a new. And it was like every time I thought it was the time to go and finally get it over with, then they'd be like, oh, they call me the morning. I would say, actually, we canceled. We can't. Somebody, blah, 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 COVID. And I'm like, I just wanted to get it over with.
Yeah.
Like, just let me move on with my life. Let my family move forward with my life. You know, my dad had fell ill with illnesses. Just a lot was going on. And here I am just trying to just keep above water. But not only that, and it wasn't up above water, I was swimming good, but it was like that one cloud had so much pull over me, you know, that it was like I was running dry. I was running dry emotionally, because it was like, how do you plan ahead fully?
Right.
You know, I couldn't even plan ahead for my graduation from college, because I'm like, well, court's coming up, and my graduation isn't for 6 more months, you know?
Right.
Like, this is investment, and this is going to make me go backwards. And so November 2nd happens, I go to court, and my baby shower is planned for the 5th of November, and for my twins. And so I'm thinking, so my lawyer, Derek Hansen, who's an amazing lawyer, he was like, okay, we're going to get in court, you know, and we talked about downward departures, because I hadn't been in trouble in so long, you know, and the community stood behind me, and my job. I mean, everyone was advocating for, I mean, even DHS had sent in a letter saying, hey, you know, we recommend that she stays in the community. She's done everything she needs to do. She, you know, and so here I'm walking in court thinking, yes. So we had a cookout plan for afterwards. I was not fearful.
Right.
Like, I was excited. My whole I mean, I had over 50 people come to that courtroom, family, community workers, you know, job workers, like people there that are my village.
You invested
you know,
in
the city. Yes. Yeah. You know, and they were there to support, and nobody's seen it coming. You know, I'm 36 weeks pregnant with my twins. I'm walking in the courtroom just glowing, you know, like, yes, let's do this, you know,
finally,
let's do this, you know. And I get in there, and the judge, you know, and everything happens for a reason, you know, but he looks at me, and I get in the front row with my son, who's 1, my daughter, family, everyone's there. And he says, why do you think you should stay in the community? And I'm like, sir, why wouldn't I? I'm like, I get that I've wronged, but I have put back into my community. I reinvested. I continue to reinvest, and there's no limit to that. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm done with that checklist.
Right.
You know, it's like, it's limitless.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, what more? And he's like, I don't think that's enough. He's like, I'm sentencing you to 88 months in prison.
88 months.
88 months in prison. So there I was, 36 weeks pregnant, and it still hadn't dawned on me, you know. And he's like, I know you can be successful, but
yeah.
And it was like, but what? You know, and it still didn't dawn on me that he just basically said that I'm going away.
So 88 months.
Yes.
That's 5
7.5 years.
I was doing the math in my head. That's more than 6. I had worked up to 6.
Yes.
So 7.5 years.
Yes.
This is in 2022.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not 29.
Right.
So
yes,
some stuff happened in there.
Yes. So even though I was sentenced with 88 months in prison, so they arrest me in court, take me in. I'm like, what did I do? Like, then the shame kicks in, you know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I? You know, how could I bring babies into this world? How could I leave them abandoned? How, you know? And then it's like all these things are kicking in that were like I feared.
Yes.
But I had put to the side because I'm like, I'm doing so good. I'm doing so good.
Yeah, and in your perspective.
Yes.
Like your perspective now is everything happens for a reason. So,
yes. So purposeful. There's a
purpose. In the moment, might have been tough.
Yes.
In the moment, being sentenced was not pleasant.
Right.
you had
It was.
you were seeing rainbows. You were seeing why would I not? You know, here's our picnic afterwards.
Yeah.
And then to have that shattered.
It's completely shattered. So, and again, that goes with the control thing.
Yes.
You know, that goes with not surrendering. That goes with not just like going where you need to be, and sometimes just hearing that like your life has a greater purpose than that.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Right.
You
'Cause
know,
who wouldn't want to be rewarded for,
And-
for years of doing
you know?
something,
Oh yeah.
and you probably have a plan, and and you're thinking to yourself, but the problem is that in addiction there are consequences.
no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of those things where I guess what a shame that it went the way that it did, but like she said,
Yeah. Good.
Well,
it turned out to be something more.
even the delayed consequences. Like what
That's
a
the
wonderful
Those are the worst kind.
Those are the worst.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's like telling a kid.
I said that as a past. I mean, come on, I've had those moments.
Right.
Well, right. But I mean, even like it's like I would explain to people, it's like telling your my 2-year-old like go stand in the corner, and he's like, but for what, Mom? Because it was like for something a week ago, which I don't do that, but it's just that mindset where it's like
Doesn't calculate.
it doesn't calculate
Yeah.
because in life you do something wrong, you pay the consequences, you move forward.
So my youngest is 5, and we were at this convention last week, and we stayed in a lodge, and he was with his cousins, and he was running all over. My 5-year-old's running all over the place. I mean, we're trying to sit down in a restaurant to eat a meal, and he's run. So I told him, you sit in your chair. We're in a nice restaurant. You need to sit in your chair, or Daddy's gonna have to give you pow.
Yeah.
And he, whatever, and he just keeps going, and finally he keeps playing again and again, and so we wait through dinner, and then dinner's over, and I said, come with Daddy, and Daddy takes him to the hotel room, and his face starts to change, like he thought he got away with it. We sit down, like, Dad's gonna give you a pow, and that's pow. It was more about it was like this. It was just this little.
Right.
Just that, right? But he's so emotional for him. That was like the end.
That was like the end of the world. Yeah.
He starts weeping, and you have to hug him. It's like, look, I was like, yes, Daddy waited several minutes to do this for you, but there are consequences to our actions. And it's like, yes, it was delayed. You thought you were free. I'm sorry.
Right.
So,
and the biggest thing with that is it's just like verbalizing like this is why.
yes.
And so for me, it was hard to like grasp that because he's like, this isn't enough.
Right.
And I'm like, tell me what's enough and I will do it.
Right.
Because
you're in that mindset.
Yeah.
I'm
like, this is not just for show. Like this is my life. Like this is my life,
Mhm.
and I've worked for this life. And again, everything happens for a reason, and sometimes you got to go through the trenches. And so I went into stress because I was arrested, pregnant.
Right.
Not like, what am I going to do? I'm pregnant. I'm, twins. Like,
pregnancy emotions.
yeah. So
Sorry.
I started bleeding out in the jail.
Oh
and
my
and that like hours later, and
Well, because twins are naturally, they're naturally come early anyways. You're at 36 weeks. I mean, you were on the line right there. Anyway.
I'm a happy person, so it was like went from like this emotion to like this emotion, and it was like, wait, what's going on? So I gave birth to my beautiful daughters on November 3rd, and they were premature, obviously 6 weeks, and they are amazing. We were in the NICU for. Okay, but let me back up a little bit. So here I am in the hospital, just gave birth, mind you. Nobody could be there with me. So like their dad couldn't come in and be there. Like, and I was like still trying to control things, so I'm like, just let him come in. Like, these are his babies. Like, you know what I mean?
If it would have been different,
right,
easier, but you got twins.
Right. So, and here I am with, the deputies, and they're there with me, and the whole nursing staff, I mean, always amazing. Like, they've known me. They've known me. We're a small community. Like, everyone knows everybody. And they are really so supportive of me, and they knew my journey because I've been very open about it with my doctors, with my kids' doctors, with everyone. Like, hey, I am a recovering addict. Like, this is me. But I am also like a sister, a friend. I'm not just
you're a person.
I'm a person. Yeah. And whether I'm wearing a hoodie and you can't tell I have tattoos on, or whether I'm standing at any meeting, or if I'm standing at a grocery store or at church, I'm me before you label me with anything else.
Yeah.
And so here I am, and I'm like, I'm not giving birth to these babies. I can't do that right now. Like, this is not the time. I'm not,
They got 4 more weeks.
Yeah, and I'm like, this is not this, and needless to say, I gave birth to the babies, and And here I am, and I had to say goodbye to them. I had to say goodbye to them because I am a ward of this, I was in custody. I was awaiting to be transported to prison.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably, I thought that would have been the hardest point in my life, was bidding my babies farewell.
Yeah.
And not knowing when I would see them again. After I just had to say goodbye in the courtroom, but I didn't get to say, you know what I mean? Like, It was like one thing after another after another. It's like, and in my head, I'm like, but why? Like, I was doing so good. It's just like, you start questioning, like, what did I do that for? Like, why, and it's like, you have to just like, in the midst of the darkness, your good faith and your good movements show.
Mm-hmm.
And they may not show when you want them to show, but they show. Eventually they come when they're supposed to. You just got to stay faithful in your walk. And and I could have been rabid, and I could have been mean and spiteful, but I still maintained the peace that lives within me. To the people that handled me, to the officers that stood beside me, to like, I wasn't full of rage. I was curious, and I was confused, and I was hurt. And so my spouse got to come in and follow the babies out, escort them to the new hospital, because I was in Mayo County when I gave birth, and they don't have a NICU.
Okay.
So they're like, okay, we have to move the babies. They need immediate care.
Yeah.
You can't go with them though.
Right.
And so that was my goodbye moment,
Oh, wow.
And
because they're going to NICU.
Yeah, and I was going to prison.
Wow.
And I get this call randomly because I couldn't use my phone. I was in custody.
You were.
Yeah, So here I am laying there, first time alone, no baby in my womb, no babies at my side, nobody except for the deputies and the care team from the hospital, which they were great, but I really had to sit there and be like, wow,
Because the air conditioning.
What have I done? Like, what have I done?
Yeah.
And I was feeling it. And so I get this phone call out of the blue, and it was from Miss Timlin, who is the parenting coordinator at Shakopee.
Okay.
Minnesota just opened a new law in the last couple of years called the Healthy Start Act. It's for incarcerated moms who are pregnant.
Okay.
It gives them the ability to be out with their babies for a year once they give birth, and then maintain in the community as long as they're doing well and abiding. However, it's for short-term sentences.
Right, and yours is on the edge.
Yes, and so
what would be the short? What?
12 months and under.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So so yours is long term. Okay.
Yeah.
I was when I hear short term, I think 2 to 3 years.
Right. So short term.
That's
is
short
12 months
term
and
to
under.
you. So perspective.
Yeah.
My
How much
dad.
time have you spent in jail?
My
3 years is a sentence.
My dad was a state trooper in Washington State, so my perspective again is a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
When I misbehaved, when I misbehaved as a kid, my dad says I can make one phone call and have them come pick you up, and you can do overnight in a holding cell.
Yeah.
Sorry, so I'll behave.
I used to know a local in Iowa, and I used to bring my daughter. I'm like, come on, let's go. We're gonna go take a visit. And she'd open the cell, and she's like, Mom, and I'm like, no, you're gonna, yes. This is, and so at the same time, that's a different aspect. People probably wouldn't expect that of me as a parent, as I'm like reprimanding my child,
Right.
where I'm like, here, we're gonna go, but then because people don't get to see that world, you know what I mean? And so yeah, I mean, that's funny you brought that up.
So you get this phone call.
Like this phone call, and I thought it was a sick joke,
Right.
But the deputy handed me the phone, so I knew, because nobody else could call me, couldn't call nobody. And so I'm sitting there just waiting for the transport to go get me to go to prison, and I get this phone call, and they said, normally when this is the program, this is this and that, and I'm like, no, I don't want it. I was like shut down, like I was emotionally, I'm like, nope, like a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, no.
You don't. I have no hope. Don't give me hope.
Like I just lost everything. Like I'm empty, and the thing is, I wasn't empty yet. I wasn't done, But I wanted to tell myself I was done, because I'm like, I don't know how much more I can take,
Right.
And that's what I said to them. And they're like, well, here's the deal. I mean, it's not a for sure thing, because it is in a gray area. They call me the gray area, and this isn't usually possible, but, and that's again where the purpose thing comes into life. Like, you never know where your walk will lead you.
Yeah.
Because the critical situation my daughters were in, I was in this gray area. And because my years of stability and recovery and investment into my community, and the fact that it was well known that they were like, well,
So
you
there
were already
was the
doing good.
reward,
Yes.
kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. So that so,
Gotcha.
so
So I they see me, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I've been even though I was in my darkest moment, what I thought was one of my darkest moments, and I was like, why?
and
Why?
there this new law, new
New
program.
law, new program.
We have this gray area that could be a really great pilot.
Pilot,
opportunity,
yes,
You know,
and
figuring that out.
and and there's that growth in that area. Whereas like if people don't believe or just give a little bit of hope into something or that chance, then there's no room for growth. And
Right.
so here we are. So I'm like, no, and then she's like, well, think about it, call back, and I was like, I just didn't want to feel that pain again,
Right.
that hope, and then all of a sudden it's like torn away again. And so, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'll give it, I'll do it. So, and she's like, here's the deal. And even the deputies were like, it's this new program. This is unheard of territories, especially with my sentence,
Right.
And so it's a blessing in disguise. And they're like, well, I don't know how that works. And so then they told him, well, we're going to send an agent. They're going to put an ankle monitor on her. And then you can leave her be. Like, she's then ours. Like, she's property of the state now.
She's got the ankle monitor on her.
Yep, she's been released from your custody. So so they came into that. I signed the papers. I was put on parole.
Mm-hmm.
So normally you get out of prison, you go on parole, but I went on before I went in because I was.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so everything's been backwards, upside down, tipsy topsy turvy, but we've been seeing our way through it. But it's been great. It's been. I mean, I've had my hard times, bad times, but so I get to go be with my babies and I get to reunite with them, and I have this GPS monitor on, and I'm like, okay, this is new field, like, and I'm like analyzing things, like, okay, how am I going to do this? And then the whole time in my head, I'm thinking. So the deal is you get a year to be with your babies normally,
Right.
because normally their sentence expires and then they get to stay home,
Mm-hmm.
if they do well. But I had more than a year
You
sentence.
had 8.
So that means once my year was up, I had to go commit. So
Right.
for now, I got this impending cloud over my head still.
So you still.
So it's like you're just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Right, And so, but I'm like, it's okay. I'm good. I get to invest in my kids. I get to, I get to continue doing that. I get to keep building this village up around them, you know, and whatever happens. But maybe I can make a change. Maybe I can show people that even though we're labeled with long-term sentence, short-term sentence, we're still human beings.
Right.
We still, if you have that desire to be clean and if you have that drive to want a better life, you're going to do it regardless of what you're labeled as.
Well, and the way that
remained clean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, through all this, and so that, but even then, like the
Well, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Sorry.
Like ankle monitor for all.
Yeah, you would hope. But the idea of the role that the accountability, as much as that accountability cloud is over your head, that still was a motivating factor.
I built a relationship with that cloud.
Yeah.
And that's what changed. No, really. Like, I was like, welcome, come on in. Like, I mean, the DLC office here in Albert Lea
What was
is
it
amazing.
called back in 2020? The new normal?
The new normal. Yes, the new normal. So, like, I was like chatting, sending photos, family, you know what I mean? Like, they were in my day with me.
Yeah.
Like, and not just like my agent, not just, it was like the receptionist, you know what I mean? Like, they were all a part of my children's lives and their growth. They were all a part of my everyday walk in recovery because we made it that way. Like, we're a community,
right?
And that's what was beautiful about it. And so even though I had this impending cloud that I was like, I'm going to build a relationship with you instead. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to know me and I'm going to know you. And that way, like, no matter what, we're going to walk, we're going to keep walking. So I sat down one day and I'm like, you know what? I love our city, but our city is pretty little, you know what I mean? But powerful things can come out of little things, and I'm like, I just need to reach. I just need to keep reaching. And so I did. I started like sending out little bits of my story to like these mom, like all these different kind of advocates, and like just trying to see what kind of resources there is in this world.
Right.
And whether it be for like, twin moms or
right.
anything,
Well,
like what can I build?
The thing with because you have this mentality of building, because again, I'm sure the judge's words, the fact that you remember it was like what you're doing is not enough.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm like, what do you mean?
And so the idea of and it can hit negatively.
Yeah, if you
let it can hit negatively, and so the idea of like I'm not doing enough means I've got to do more.
Right.
And that.
But the trick is not doing more for that judge.
Right.
and showing him like, haha, it's like doing more for me and mine and my community, and knowing that I don't need you to approve of what I'm doing because I'm going to keep doing it.
That's the way I was brought up. I'm the competitive sort. So for me, the way my mind works is if someone says no, you can't, I will then say, watch me. And it's not for me. It's to I was going off to college, and somebody made a bet with my youth pastor. Ryan's not going to leave. Ryan's not going to go anywhere. Just you wait. He won't leave. And when I found out about that bet, I was like, well, then you're going to lose.
See, I guess I have to assume that that for the judge, it wasn't really like a personal attack to her.
Mm-mm.
It was probably more in his process was this person needs to be punished. You know what I mean? And I can't just allow for something. So I don't think I don't know that because the justice system is
messed.
It's very messed up.
It can be. It's
right.
messy.
But I think that when it becomes to a person, because I don't see how he could look at Victoria and be like, "You've done 3-4 years. How many years was it?"
At the time, I had 2.
2 years.
Yeah.
Of building your life, and now guess what? I'm going to destroy it.
Well, and
that had to kind of weigh on him a little bit.
Well, and here's the thing, though, is that not
that I'm defending him.
No, and here's the thing, like, I could have chose to be angry at him. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing, he wasn't just a judge to just see me that day in court. When my oldest got in trouble and we had a CPS case, and so during that time of my recovery, we were also doing a CPS case for my teenager.
Okay.
And he saw me. I was bald 3 years ago. Okay. Like completely bald, head tattooed, wearing a tutu, rainbow, like I was there. Okay. But I owned it. But I owned it. And here's the thing, though, is that he saw me. Like he saw me go from ground zero.
Oh, right.
He saw, not just like once a year, or just not like every month we had. Yes. He also was the judge for my teenagers. He also was the judge from the domestic that I had. He also, so he had all these different images of me, so, and that's why he said, I know you will succeed. Right. However, I need to make an example. And so, and
there was an accountability thing that was taking place.
There is, and I was like, and so, and I was confused. I was really confused. I'm like, what?
Because you probably felt like you were doing the best that you had done.
Yes, and he told me
not only
he
just
told
in
me
recovery,
he told me that he didn't believe I had enough remorse, and that hurt me hard, because I'm like, I don't know what else I could give to show you, but I do. I ended up knowing because I gave my children up while I had to leave. I gave the most important.
How do you measure remorse?
Well, and that's the hard part, because and that's the thing too. As a pastor, I study the Bible and I go through these things, and there's a moment where we as a pastor we talk about what the Bible teaches us, and so it deals a lot with the concept of sin and the idea that all of us, each one of us, have broken every bit of God's laws. And that spiritually, I've broken the laws of God. I've broken the relationship with God. And that there is only one sentencing for breaking the laws of God.
Right. And
that is death and eternal separation from God in hell. And that's it. And so, just the hopelessness of that spiritual situation. Well, and so then I want to finish my story and then we'll come to you real quick. But because that's only half of it. Yeah. Because see, Christ, like the punishment still exists. Even today, the punishment for sin still exists. But Christ God in his mercy sent his only son, who he took that punishment. And the Bible says he became sin for those he became sin. And that he took on the sin of the whole world. And then it says that whoever believes upon him and repents. And that's where I choose to follow Jesus. And then because I see where I've broken. And that remorse kicks in. That somebody else took my punishment for me. Oh my goodness. he had to die for me.
But-
And then the repentance, that whole idea of changing in the actions and actually doing, and not just saying I'm sorry, but actively moving in a new direction.
Right. And,
So, go ahead.
and for me though, it was like I wasn't gonna get on my knees, and I told him, I said, if you want me to get on my knees and beg, I won't do that. I'm telling you what I'm doing.
Right.
You know, and so that's where the confusion was, because I'm very vocal. So it was like, tell me,
Right.
so I can tell me,
Yeah.
you know. And so and I don't think ill of him. I firmly know that the justice system is in the process of growing.
Yeah.
You know, and with my sentence that I did, I've had the ability to help it grow. You
Right.
know, because I've used that time to benefit that aspect of, like, I went in with a different set of lenses that weren't normal. I went in with a clean set of lenses that normally you go from jail to prison to, you know what I mean? But I went from like my recovery life to, I walked myself into prison, you
Yeah.
know? And and it, you know, I had to settle with that many nights where it's like, if I started letting ideas of like, oh, well, that judge, you know, no, but at the same time, I did wrong and I had consequence to pay. Do I believe that there can be alternative ways? Yes.
Mhm.
Am I trying to help build them ways? Yes. You know,
And I'd like to get into
yeah,
that. I do-
yeah. And so, yeah, go ahead.
But I do want to say is, so how do you measure remorse? Like, I don't understand that,
Mhm.
because I have no idea what is in your thought process or how you feel about some or what you think. Like, your actions can only show so much, you
Mhm.
know, but you don't know how torn up somebody is inside, you know,
Right.
about some of the things that they've done, you know. Sorry.
The phone's up.
Right, like, God dang it. So how do you measure that and then say, you know, so I'm gonna,
Well, and that's the
It
hard
just-
part, because again,
Right.
remorse.
but that tells that it kind of goes to that whole idea that the system is broken, because they can take into account certain things,
Right.
but they can't
Right.
take into account
Yes.
the
And that's where the
the
brokenness
full
is.
of it.
Because even like for like I have tons of nephews and nieces, and I have a big family, and even for my daughter, my daughter was the only child of mine that had seen me enacted, my oldest.
Mhm.
My three youngest have never spent a life with a mother.
Mom's
in
always
addiction.
been this.
Always
mom's-
been there, always been sober, always been, you know, they woke up, they've been fed, you know what I mean? That was their life. And so for my daughter, who was like, seen me change everything, you know, seen me completely, to see me get taken, like, she's had to deal with, why, you know, my
Mhm.
niece, why, like, this doesn't make sense. Like,
Right.
you let people out after getting in trouble because they want to tell on someone, you know what I mean? Or they, you know, and they're not holding them accountable, and they're just hurting them in turn too.
Right.
You know, it's just killing the society.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's where the break is that certain people aren't being held to that accountability.
Well,
you
and that's
know?
the thing, like the whole idea, like, and this is like holding accountable and measuring remorse. It's the idea that and this is where it's difficult, because we take a rule book
Mhm.
that says these are the
Guidelines,
things, these are the guidelines, this is what you do, and then, however, like you said, you were the gray area. You're dealing with individual circumstances, and you're dealing with people. You know, we're not cookie cutter. We display our emotions differently. We react differently. Some people are criers. Some people are just quiet and stoic.
We're all
And
created individually.
there's such a wide, and then the nature of recovery, and as I've grown and learned more about this, and you know, my views and my understanding has grown, is that when it comes to these things, you can't just there are appropriate steps, and those steps exist, but at the same time, to make it cookie cutter, it's like, oh yeah, everyone has to go here, everyone has to do this, everyone has to, it makes it overly rigid.
Yeah.
And what you have to realize is that when it comes to a person, you have to look at the individual as a unique individual, on saying, well, raising children. So I have 3, 15, 11, and 5. And each one of them is completely unique and different. You know, you got your 4 kids, and
And
each
a grandson.
and the grandson. Oh boy! And so each one would not have picked that. But each one is so unique.
I can't even. You just can't imagine.
I want to ask you how old you are.
Right.
I'm 36.
So it's like, me, I'm not even 40 yet. So there's that. But this idea though that when we raise our children, each one is so unique and different. You know, the oldest, we had to lay into him. I mean, when we moved from Texas, we came from Texas about six and a half years ago, almost 7 years ago. We moved up from Texas. When we were packing up his bedroom, and one of the things that this I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but we do believe in spanking. Spanking works if it's done appropriately. And in his room, we were packing it up, and we found not one, not two, but three plastic spoons. That's like the little. It's like I'm gonna. You know, he had hidden three in his room because we had to discipline the poor child. Now my daughter, my 11-year-old, you could look at her, just give her the angry look, and she's instantly in tears. She's on the floor. She's broken. My youngest, the times when we have to just give him the pow, it's light. It's just a little bit of a noise. It's just a little love tap. You know, and you cup your hand so it makes the pop. You know, there's no force. You're just making the pop. And so each one is so different. Like, here's the rules. Here's what's the expectations are of the home. Right. This is society. And here's society's expectations. And they all respond differently. And so you do. And so you kind of have to craft each one and be unique to each one as they respond in their own way. My oldest, he's a lot more stoic now. My middle one, she's the artistic one. She's got that flair for the dramatic. And my youngest, he's all action. And each one just responds differently, and which means that when it comes to the enforcing of the rules and the expectations, that yes, the expectation is the same. Here's what's expected of you. But as they break that, knowing each one, okay, what's going to be effective to reach each one, and that's where the measure is different. So like when we talk about measuring remorse, it's okay, remorse for this person is going to be like that. Remorse for that person is going to be like this. And it's for a judge to sit up there and have to gauge remorse, it's impossible. Right. It's impossible. And so they do. And so the hard part for them, like you say,
especially when they already have a caseload.
They have a caseload, and they need to make an example, unfortunately. And the idea that it's broken is because we are dealing with individuals, and we're given these systems. And so it is very, very wide. But that's what's amazing is what works for your benefit is here with this unique
situation.
This very unique situation.
See, so this is a problem for me. Okay, just so you know, so addiction is although it causes chaos. Don't get me wrong, and there are things that happen, and obviously there's some things you're going to need to pay for as far as consequence. Right. But if you're a judge and you're sitting there and you're looking at an addict who was caught with with drugs, because guess what? That's what addicts do. We do drugs. And then years later, you're looking at the same person knowing that they haven't been doing those drugs. How do you not be like, okay, this person is making a change? Because isn't that what the goal is in the whole system? Yeah. Is that we see change in people and help them flourish, not let's let them flourish and then guess what, we're going to cut you off.
And that's the hard part too.
It irritates me.
It is, and I can get that irritation.
Well, but I mean, seriously, why would you not, like, why don't you take that into account? You know, like, I'm not saying that addiction is an excuse. I'm not saying that addiction is something that, you know, we can be like, okay, well, you know, he's just an addict. You know, what I'm saying is that, you know, and most addicts don't get the ability to bail out. You know, not all addicts have the ability to bail out and be able to spend that time. So, you know, I mean, different circumstances. Yeah. You know,
but my first time in 2010, I didn't bail out, so I sat that year.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, but if you give the opportunity why not allow that to continue to grow? Why would you crush that?
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine how she felt. Yeah. When first of all she's losing her babies. Right. And then she's got an opportunity, and then guess what? A year later, She lost the babies.
Like I have them at home, but I had to walk myself.
Right,
You know,
and
so I
you-
said goodbye.
Well,
But
so here's the fun part, and then I will pass it back to you here. And this is what's hard because again,
Sorry, I didn't mean to get all out.
it's passionate.
I got a
Yeah,
little emotional.
Um, yeah,
Hate
but that
everything.
is
I
but-
disapprove of that.
but yeah, but that and that's the hard part. Is like and for I gotta respond.
It's okay.
One of my staffers is asking me a question here.
But that fire that is built up, like because other, so so here he is, and that fire is like lit in him right now, right?
Yeah.
But that is what creates the possibility for change,
Right.
as long as it
Right.
stays
Well, so-
appropriate. Okay.
Yeah.
So and that's what it takes, that drive or that passion to want to make changes somewhere, and it's just the ability to sort out and figure out the right path to do that.
Yes.
And that's what it is, you know. And in the deal,
And that's what happened.
yeah,
for
and
you.
that's what happened, you know.
Let's.
And so,
Can we hear about that? I'm
Yeah.
really curious about this
yeah.
because I know that you're.
So my girls were born on the 3rd of
Okay.
November, and so I got the notice that, hey, you know, sorry that this program hasn't moved forward yet. You know,
Mhm.
like it hadn't had the chance to grow yet. They didn't have that statistic yet. You know,
Right.
which there I am. And
You're
so
that there. You're
the
that primary-
third statistic that was,
Oh,
you
wow.
know,
Yeah.
the break in it, because there's, you know, their labels, you know, and then I'm the oddball, you know.
Right.
But it's okay, I own my spots. And so I would say, don't mind my leprosy, it's beautiful. But no, really. So right before I went in, so they're like, on your twins' first birthday, you're gonna have to commit,
Mhm.
because the law only allows for us to let you be out for that long. So they were just abiding by these rules that were set. They were you know what I mean? It was nothing. And so I'm like, okay, so I got this much time to prepare. I got this much. So in that time though, I did training. I became a peer recovery specialist to aid my fellow peers, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's
I was
awesome.
trying to stay on that path. I was still in school, but you know, as I got closer, it got mindfully hard. Like I couldn't focus. I'm like, why am I focusing on math when I need to be investing that, you know, like I could be taking that time and spending it with my kids. So like it was really a struggle and a balance. But what happened is so on November 6th, so like I was supposed to turn myself in the 3rd, and then I was like, can we not do it on their birthday, you know?
Right.
And so they granted that. But then like I lost my grandma that week. I lost my brother's grandpa that week. I lost my spouse's cousin that week. I mean, there was a lot of things that would have gave me the ability to say, hey, I'm gonna go get high.
Right.
Why wouldn't I get high? You know, but I didn't. I stayed sober. My community not only walked me up to the DOC office. I mean, there's so much love there, you know. And I walked myself into that office to turn myself over and be taken to prison. And so I did that, and I said goodbye to my family, and I said goodbye to this life that I built, and I said goodbye to what I built so much into. But and you know, after being gone, so then I get taken to the prison. I'm like, okay.
Which, by the way, this was a public event.
Yes, very public.
I
So
don't
I remember
know
I
if you
told you I
remember.
advocated.
Yes.
So like I did a piece with the Marshall Project. Also, John, James, and Carlos did Yos. They
Yep.
started this documentary, you know, about like helping me put awareness out there and like
Right.
just, you know, just the reality of what happened.
The more to your case,
Yeah.
the more information
yes.
that will just shed light on the whole
And
process.
just the
Yeah.
the fact that we as addicts and our children should not, if we can find better ways, let's do it.
Well, and getting to you know, like for example, Teen Challenge. Teen Challenge was inaugurated by David Wilkerson
Mm-hmm.
when he went from a white picket church in the South, and he went to New York City because he saw a newspaper. He was praying in his living room in the South, and he saw a newspaper with a picture of 6 boys on the front who were going to a courthouse to be sent. They were going to be sentenced, and so he flew to New York to reach these kids because his heart was broken for them.
Yeah.
And he began to minister on the street to these addicts, to these teenagers in New York, because he's like, there's got to be something that works, and Jesus,
Yes.
and in his mind, Jesus works, and so he there was nothing like it before that.
Well, and it's all about like plugging yourself in spiritually to like the outlet, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, because like you end this endless cycle. And so that's what I was doing. Like I was always achieving, but I wasn't investing, you know, and then I started investing and not even counting the achievements though. So that's the difference,
Right.
you know, like when you I'm not going to limit my achievements because I'm going to continue growing. But when you're counting your achievements, and focusing on just that, you're limiting yourself to your growth. And so for me, so then here I am in prison. I took myself in on an 88-month sentence, not knowing, in my head, I'm like, well, I'm going to do everything I can to get back home to my babies, to my family.
So now was there, so one question, I want to come back to that, but you had 88 months. Now, was that 88 months postponed because of that program? And so
yes, so
okay.
So a year, so if I would have messed up during that year,
right,
none of that time would have counted.
Okay.
But I did get grace for that year.
Okay.
Because I still had, I was on parole, so I was
that
still
88 months at that moment is essentially like 76.
Right. Going in, yep.
Yeah.
And then time served for the time that I was in county.
Yeah.
And so, which is a blessing, like I was like, okay, that's, I gotta thank you, and it's just being grateful, like, okay. So now I'm down to this limit, so that made it, so when I went there, I'm like, okay, I didn't feel like I was just starting at ground zero again. So I'm like, okay, my feet are running, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. But I wasn't expecting the emotional, like I expected it, like I tried preparing for it before, and I was like, maybe I should need to get some psych meds. Maybe I should, you know what I mean? Like for this emotional trauma bond that was breaking.
Yeah.
But I thought about it so much that it didn't hit me at first, and I didn't get. They're like, you're handling this pretty well for the situation you're in, and you're pretty aware. So no, you know what I mean? No, every aspect was no. And they're like, you don't need it. You're strong. And I'm like, stop telling me I'm strong. Like you don't know what I'm feeling inside.
Right.
But I am strong, and I'm glad that didn't happen because I'm glad I didn't get lenient upon these meds that, I mean, sometimes you do need meds, but in my head, I was like, I'm going to need these, but I didn't,
right.
And I kept pushing and pushing. And I mean, there was times where I'd wake up at 8 a.m. at the prison, you get in there and there's all these women in there and it's heart-wrenching, some have been there. I have a good friend of mine that's been in there for 20 years and she's got 11 more to go. And she was a victim of abuse who confided in someone else, a family member, and they took it in their own hands. And the gentleman died. And she got life for aiding and abetting,
Wow.
And so that's, you hear these things, but you don't hear these things. You hear bits of pieces on a newspaper,
Right.
So then that drove me even more. I mean, they're like just stirring inside, like, what is all this going on in here? Like, why? And I got to see it from a different set of lenses. Like, I got to see, I didn't come in there, like, still coming down. I didn't come in there, you know what I mean? Like, I came in there sober. I came in there in recovery. I came in there as a mom. I knew what life I had to go home to.
Right.
I wasn't like, what am I going to go home to? No, I knew the love and the community I was going back to. I knew that Albert Lee was my home. I knew that I had a church, a beautiful church, a beautiful community, beautiful friends, beautiful family that I was going back to. Yeah. I knew what I was going home to.
You had a purpose and a goal.
Yes. That and I was open-minded to the fact that, okay, God, whatever I'm here to do, like, just show me. Like, show me what I'm here to do. Because I know that I'm not just here to be here.
Right.
Right. Like.
And then all of a sudden,
right.
It happened.
Yeah.
Well, I want to do this, because it is time. Believe it or not, it's been a little more than an hour already. If you're able, we'd like to have you on again, if it's possible. And so we can do like a part 2.
Yeah.
And have you come back again if that's okay with you.
It's like the cutting edge seat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be in 2 weeks.
It would be in 2 weeks.
Would you be able to do that? Even okay.
If not in schedule, we can record this whenever. Yeah. They're all hearing this too. But yeah, I think that would be right, because this is fun. I mean, and I think in closing, one of my closing remarks is recognizing that as a community, one of the things that we need to recognize and need to see that these are people. Yeah. Their stories. These are real people.
And it's not just the individual.
No, it's
everyone they're connected to. As far as the stranger, there's like, I've made a beautiful connection with them, but like a little girl at church, that their family's never been in addiction.
Yeah.
And like they bonded to me and I bonded to them and we're connected. So here I am, I'm gone, and it's affecting this family that had no ties to it. You know, because we're a community.
We're a community, and the idea that we can still love each other. We can still advocate for each other. We can still help and break for each other.
Right.
And I think that's something that is so important. And like just because they look different, just because there's a record, just because there's addiction, that doesn't negate that there's still somebody who needs to be loved.
Right.
There's still somebody that needs the help, that needs the community.
And it's a domino effect, though. Like,
Yeah.
if we had all the dominoes, it's like for each representing person there, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, we're here for each other. We're here to live alongside one another,
Yeah.
not above one another.
Well, and that's what the way we started this out, the whole idea of community and addictions, the idea of like why the community is such a key role,
Yes.
and where that goes from there. So
And yet they seem to,
It's because that's that break, but that's where we gotta build. We gotta
Yeah.
right.
mesh it.
Right.
well, that's what
And
people.
mesh.
There's a lot of times there's a lot of churches. There's a few churches in Albert Lea that are really kind of start to reach out to the addiction community, and
Yes.
each one's doing something different. And they're like, you gotta do it this way, you gotta do it that way. I'm like, well, I don't want to reinvent somebody else's wheel.
No, you can't limit.
And so when I'm saying like, what can we do? What can we do? And you approached me last year, and you're like, hey, I'd like to do this. And like, well, okay, well, let's think. What if we did this, doing a podcast version of it? And that allowed us to.
Which, by
shed
the way,
light.
I did not really.
There was multiple different ways of doing this. That when we processed this out,
Right.
this was to me at the time, this was the easy way. But it's really nice is it allows us, because I would think it allows us some freedoms.
Right.
We aim to be clean in our language, but I don't expect it to be completely. But at the same time, it allows us to meet in a very safe environment,
Right.
where it is just the three of us in this room, and we're able to be transparent and have our conversations recorded, where we can share what we're comfortable with, and then it allows us to be raw with each other,
Mm-hmm.
and to share our stories and our different perspectives. When we started this, my perspective is completely different from Jabbar's, and we both grown from our conversations.
Right. Yeah.
And
So I just to kind of, in my mind, kind of the way that I saw this particular conversation,
this whole thing, yeah,
right, is that so in recovery there's an integrity to what you do. You know what I mean? And
yes,
and from the outside, people look in. They almost kind of expect a perfection from somebody to always be. And we have our falls and our failures, but those falls and failures should not be caused by something else,
right?
Or somebody else, and I got to be honest, I was listening, and there were several points where I thought to myself, I'd have been like,
right,
I'm going, I might as well go get high. Why not? Because you're going to do this to me. You're going to do that to me. And then it started to occur to me that no, they did not do this to me, that I did this to me.
Yeah.
And in order for me to continue to move forward in recovery, which, by the way, I'm super impressed that everything you went through, you stayed in it.
Yeah, that is huge.
Is that it's that integrity within you.
Yeah.
That you
that relationship within yourself.
you make that decision to move forward, and it wasn't to impress anybody else.
Right. No.
It wasn't to to be like, hey, look what I did, so she could show up in court. It was because she really wanted to change her life and do something differently. And that's kind of the goal of all this whole thing to me is for the community, first of all, to understand that we need to shine light on addiction, because the longer that it stays in the dark, the worse it's going to get.
Yeah.
And I kind of like how she put it. We have this dark side in Albert Lea, and then we have this light side, because I got to tell you, one of the best recovering communities we have, or that I've seen, is in Albert Lea.
Yeah.
There are some really good,
Phenomenal.
yeah, there's some really good recovery here, and there's also
A dark side.
some really good addiction going on,
Yeah.
because I've been there too, and so just kind of wrap up what I'm saying is that, my goal isn't necessarily to obviously I want addicts to see this. I want, some sort of,
Well, let the addict know this is what you're gonna fight for.
ability, whatever. But it's more about the community to me, and the reason why I say that is because like I told you before, I've taken from the community for so long
Yep.
that I just want to give back,
Yeah.
you know, and I don't know how else to give back other than to just be myself and give back in a way that, you know, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I continue to say that if we have a healthy community, you know,
Yeah.
you start to box in that, you know, that not, I don't want to say badness or whatever, but that addiction.
Yeah.
You know, you start to box that in, it makes it difficult for them to
Function
thrive.
properly.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and
Yeah.
so, you know, and that's the whole goal. How can we may not ever remove that faction from our community, but we can definitely show some understanding and help
And stand together.
and maybe try and find a way to get to that person before
Right.
they have to go to prison,
Well, and that's
or
the,
before they
Yeah.
die, or before
Yeah.
they have to, you know, go through just the
Anymore.
insanity of it. You know,
we talk repeatedly about hitting that bottom line, hitting the rock bottom. Thank you. my Gatorade mind there. But no, that is true, and like you know that is our vision, our goal with this whole thing is creating that box, making it smaller and smaller,
Yeah.
putting more light
Creating
there.
that uncomfortability for them, because then at the same time you can't get growth without feeling uncomfortable, because then you've got to resituate.
Yeah.
You know?
right?
Which
And
is why I
that's
love
and this is the exposure. You know, I mean,
Yes.
this is the
Yes.
the whole idea is you know, no matter what Victoria did,
Right.
you know, she was in recovery for years. At what point do you look at it and be like, okay, you know, it's time for us to make a change to I don't know how to explain that.
No,
But
yeah, but
I'm
no,
just-
because of that now, but because what you're trying to imply right there, but like, okay, maybe we got to resituate things. now.
Right.
But because I stayed faithful through even without that first,
Right.
let's make a change thing. Now people are like, oh,
And now you have the opportunity to make some of that.
Well, there's
And
another
that's
case
the-
law.
yeah.
The next person who's
Right.
a situation similar to yours,
yeah,
there's gonna be
there's
better
more
lead.
ground to stand.
You didn't just fight for yourself in that moment. You did not when you were investing back then.
Little
years
did she
ago.
know she was going to be
You
investing.
you were investing
a
in
lot
such a way where, yeah, your case was hard. But when you went and you faced that, what happened is, you know, someone else who could have similar situation.
I promised myself that
There's a whole different community for them to deal with
Right.
that you've established.
Now there's a new statistic.
And new statistic. Yeah.
But and what I'm trying to get at though is that, you know, that's the challenge, is that we need to be able to change the minds. That addiction isn't just this, you know, it's not like, you know, this is what it is and that's it. That's not how not how it is. And recovery is not the same either.
Mm-mm.
But if we can manage to change the community that surrounds it,
Yeah.
and have them to be able to see it with open eyes,
Right.
and with an honest heart, you know, there could be change to be made. You
Yes.
know, because isn't that what it's really always about?
We're fighting
You
for
know,
each other.
I mean,
The tactics. We're
Yeah.
fighting
When you
for
fight for each other instead of standing alone, you make
Yeah.
right, you know, and you know, I know this is carrying on. I'm sorry, you guys, but you know, like this is something that I very actually have a lot of passion about, because that is my true goal. Is let's you know, let's open our minds. Let's become healthier as a community. Let's do something that you know, obviously I'm an addict, so my focus is an addiction, but it doesn't have to be just about addiction.
Right.
You know, but this is where our focus is at.
Yes.
And this is a prime example of where if the community had, not the obviously DHS and whatever the different programs and stuff, that, you know, they were changing their minds,
Right.
right?
they were already open. Yeah.
But here's a part of the community that is rigid,
Right.
and we need to be able to try and change their minds too, and not whether it be to be more lenient or whether to be like, okay, you got to go. You know what I mean? For me, it was, you got to go.
Right.
You know,
Well,
so they did the right thing for me, because it gave me that time, that up, you know, and you know,
it's the case by case business of knowing what each person needs.
But how do you do that?
And that's the great question, and that's something that hey, the
faithful.
more
You
you stay faithful,
and you keep
the-
pushing
the
forward.
more knowledge and the more light on the subject they have, the better.
Yeah.
And that's
The
and
more
that's
people
pretty.
are willing to speak and be open
Right.
and honest and
The
and-
information.
yeah, the
Information
information that is given is more vital. Like sobriety and recovery, it's the same thing. People
Yeah.
are like, oh, sobriety, and I'm like, no, there's a difference.
There's a difference.
And that's what I mean, though. It's just that knowledge and getting it out there, and so that's.
I don't know if I call it sobriety. I call it more like not using.
Right.
Not using, but
Right.
because for sobriety in the AA community.
Oh right, no, and
Yeah.
and I mean no.
Not
disrespect to
every
them and
no
that.
everybody out here doesn't always understand what what's
Yeah, most people don't.
So because this which is more well, I'm assuming because it's on the church and stuff like that it
This
reaches
reaches a
people who are
wide-
not
There's
real.
there's the average is at least 50 views per video.
Right, but it's probably people who are find interest in it,
Like telephone now,
right?
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily know addiction, or maybe they do, or maybe I have.
It's gonna be a
Right.
variety, because we have people who, there's a wide variety. Some of them, anywhere from our families watching it, my family, and they're in Washington State.
Yeah.
And so, there's people in the church that watch these videos, and I'm sure that there's many of you who watch these, and you're all over, and your journey is a variety. Maybe you're in Albert Lee, or you're in North Bend, or you're in Beaumont, Texas, all these different areas, and
they're
it's
probably like, God, these guys.
well, the ones in Beaumont are probably like they're probably like my former youth students. They're like, Pastor Ryan's doing that now. No. But no, it's important, and that's why we do these conversations and why we have these guests. And so we're gonna wrap it up right here, and we're gonna have Victoria back for our part 2, so you can sit. I wanted to give you
By the
good
way.
time to
Thank you.
share more of your story, share kind of like just what's happening since that moment when you
Good
walked
stuff
yourself
that
in.
came out of the-
I
Right,
wanna-
because we got kind of the peak, but I didn't get the
Like the edge of the
Christianity.
peak.
the thing I'm excited about.
And then
right?
Ryan's like, okay, we're done.
We're done. So you have to come see part 2.
Blame me.
But anyways, we hope that you enjoyed this and you enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and that we are your community, and we're thankful for that. So you have a great day, and God bless. We'll see you next time.